Hi, my favorite readers. It's Miss Miranda here. I hope you're all doing well and taking care of yourselves. Tonight I have a really special story to share with you. It is called She Persisted, and it's a book about a bunch of different American women who've helped to change the world. So we'll look through and learn about some of those women tonight. It was written by Chelsea Clinton and illustrated by Alexandra Boyer. And this is a really special copy for me. It was gifted to my class by one of my very best friends. Her name is Lucy, so shout out to Lucy. Thank you for this awesome book. And she wrote on here, Miss Miranda, so proud of the difference you are making every day. Love you so much and will always be cheering you on. So every time I read that message, it makes me smile. And before we get started, readers, I just want you to take a moment to maybe close your eyes and think about what the word persist means to you. Persist, you can think of the verb. What does it mean for someone to persist? What does that look like? What kind of actions or verbs would go along with somebody who persists? We've also talked about the word persistent as a character trait. And somebody who is persistent, what does that kind of a person do? What kind of actions do they do? Somebody persists through hard things. We talked about that being somebody who never gives up. No matter what's put in their faces, they continue to push through hard things to reach their dreams and goals. So think about how you might define that word persist or persistent. Think about those things and keep those in the back of your mind as we explore these women tonight. And these are all women who were born in America. Our first woman tonight. So it says, sometimes being a girl isn't easy. At some point, someone will probably tell you no. They might tell you to be quiet, and they might even tell you that your dreams are impossible. Don't listen to them. These 13 American women certainly did not take no for an answer. They persisted. Harriet Tubman was born a slave, and her story could have ended there. Instead, scholars, she persisted, escaping from slavery and becoming the most famous conductor on the Underground Railroad. She risked her life many times to lead countless slaves to freedom, including her family, friends, and even strangers. Every person she led to freedom arrived there safely. And her quote says, "I should fight for my liberty as long as my strength lasted." And we studied Harriet Tubman earlier with my class. And we talked about how she was so selfless because she had escaped freedom and she could have just escaped slavery, and she could have stayed free and just gone on with her life and been safe. But instead, she risked her life time and time again to try and get more and more slaves to be free. So she was very selfless. She really cared about other people. Once Helen Keller became blind and deaf as a toddler, few people thought she'd be able to learn to read, write, or speak. But she persisted. Helen learned how to do all three and not only became the first person with deaf blindness, that's somebody who's deaf and also blind, to graduate from college, but she also used her story to help fight for more opportunities for people with disabilities in the United States and all around the world. Her quote says, "One can never consent to creep when one feels an impulse to soar." So that's an illustration of Helen here and her teacher, Anne Sullivan, who really helped her and figured out a way to teach her how to read, write, and speak. After Maria Tallchief's family moved to California, partly to support Maria's dreams of becoming a professional dancer, she was teased by students in her school for her Native American heritage, and later was encouraged to change her last name to something that sounded more Russian, since many professional dancers at the time were Russian. She persisted, ignoring all their taunting, which is another word for teasing, and poor advice to become the first great American prima ballerina. Her quote says, "It never occurred to me to say, it hurts to do that." So she pushed through the pain and she pushed through a lot of the teasing that she experienced because of her Native American heritage. As a 15-year-old riding a bus home from school in Montgomery, Alabama, Claudette Colvin was expected to give up her seat to a white woman just because she was African American. In Claudette's refusal to get up, she persisted in taking a stand for what is right, helping to inspire Rosa Parks to make the same choice 9 months later, an act many point to as starting the modern civil rights movement. So Claudette is kind of a hidden figure that a lot of us don't always know. I didn't really know too much about her before this book. We hear about Rosa Parks, we hear about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Claudette actually refused to give up her seat before Rosa Parks, and in her courageous effort to do that, it inspired Rosa Parks to make that same choice 9 months later, and that kind of sparked the civil rights movement where they all worked together to fight for equality for African Americans. And her quote says, "I knew then and I know now that when it comes to justice, there is no easy way to get it. You can't sugarcoat it. You have to take a stand and say, this is not right." So that's Claudette Colvin. When Ruby Bridges was in kindergarten, many schools across America, particularly in the South, still refused African American students their equal right to an education. Ruby wouldn't be treated like a second-class student, and she persisted, walking for weeks past angry, hateful protesters to integrate an all-white elementary school in New Orleans. And her quote says, "That fateful walk to school began a journey, and we all must work together to continue moving forward." And I want you to just kind of take a moment to think about how Ruby might have been feeling. I'm sure she was a little bit scared to walk past those angry people every morning to go to school. And in the school that she was trying to integrate, a lot of the white families decided to take their kids out of school because they didn't want their kids going to school with a black child like Ruby. So imagine what that might have felt for Ruby to have all those kids back out of school, and she actually ended up going all year with it was just her teacher and her one-on-one because a lot of kids dropped out of that school. I'm sure she felt lonely, maybe isolated, right? But still she persisted. Sally Ride always believed women could succeed in any math or science career. Although not everyone agreed, she persisted, and she became the first American woman in space. But that wasn't enough for Sally. She traveled into space once more and then created science and engineering programs specifically for girls, so she could help generations of young women achieve their dreams too, both on Earth and in outer space. And her quote says, it's kind of sideways, "Young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they may choose, just so they can picture themselves doing those jobs someday. You can't be what you can't see," is what Sally says, Dr. Sally Ride. So Sally Ride was the first American woman to go to space. And a few weeks ago, we read about Dr. Mae Jemison, who was the first black woman to go to space. When, as a kid, Florence Joyner visited her father in the Mojave Desert, he would urge her to run faster and faster, to run as fast as a jackrabbit. Even when she had to leave college to help support her family, she persisted in her training on the track, then went back to school and got faster and faster. Her unbroken world records in the 100-meter and the 200-meter sprints set at the 1988 Summer Olympics means she is still the fastest woman ever. And her quote says, "When anyone tells me I can't do anything, I'm just not listening anymore." So she really tries to push away any negative thoughts that people tell her she can't do this, she can't do that. She pushes that away. Oprah Winfrey's grandmother expected Oprah to follow in her footsteps and become a maid. Oprah knew, even as a little girl, that her dreams would take her somewhere else. She persisted in turning those dreams into her reality and became a media superstar, working in movies, books, magazines, theater, and most of all television, where the Oprah Winfrey Show remains the highest rated talk show of all time. And her quote says, "The biggest adventure you can ever take is to live the life of your dreams." And that's Oprah. This is another activist who we've studied before in room 22. Watching fictional judges on television inspired Sonia Sotomayor to want to be a real-life judge when she grew up. She knew she'd have to speak English as well as she spoke Spanish, study hard in school, and manage her diabetes before she could one day wear a judge's robe with a gavel in her hand. Doesn't have a picture. That's kind of what judges hit down to get order in a courtroom. She persisted, eventually becoming a Supreme Court justice and the first ever Latina to sit on America's highest court. And her quote says, "I have never had to face anything that could overwhelm the native optimism and stubborn perseverance I was blessed with." So that's Sonia. So, readers, if anyone ever tells you no, if anyone ever says your voice isn't important or your dreams are too big, remember these women. They persisted, and so should you. So I hope you enjoyed this book tonight, and I hope you take that message with you that no matter how big your dreams are, continue to push through and persist through hard things, because your goals and dreams are attainable and you can do anything you set your mind to and work hard towards. I love you, readers. Have a good night.